Can someone confirm if my screen is visible? Are we good to start? Are you able to see my screen? Okay, thank you for the confirmation. So let's do a quick recap. Yesterday there was an interruption, so I had to discontinue the class. Someone is just joining in. Okay, please. Okay. See, yesterday we are discussing about the static context with respect to inheritance. Okay, so the static context in Java, again it is categorized into three types. We have static blocks, we have static methods, and we have static variables, right? But something you need to remember always: the static blocks and static variables are, this point is very important here, guys. They are recognized and executed at the time of loading the dot class file to the JVM. Okay, what does it mean? You really do not have to create any object. Okay? They get recognized as soon as the respective dot class files are loaded to the JVM. If you remember this point, okay, then understanding the static context is very easy. Okay, please keep this in point in your memory. Recognized and executed at the time of loading the dot class file to the memory. This is all about static blocks and static variables. Of course, we have another static context, which is static methods. Someone has just joined in. Hope, if you have an option to allow, you can allow. Okay. Now static methods are executed only when you start calling the respective method, right? So with respect to inheritance, what are the things that we need to study about static context with respect to inheritance? Okay, to understand this with respect to inheritance, okay, I have taken a small example. Okay, so this is our class. I have two classes. One is class A, second one is class B, and each and every class has a static block, you see, right? And I have the third class, which is acting as a main class. Okay, so let me execute this and let me see the output now. Before even proceeding with the output, I need to save this file. File save as test.java. Yes, let me replace it. Okay, now it has been saved successfully. Compilation command java c space test.java, right? 1 minute. We have one additional basis. Okay, I think this is the one, right? Okay, let me do the compilation once again. Okay, this is the typical command for the compilation when you are using command prompt java c space test.java. Okay, now you don't see anything. It is just blinking something in the console. Okay, the cursor keeps blinking, but so many things has happened internally. Okay, let us understand what are the things that has been happened internally. Okay, I also want to take something here. Obj equal to newbie. Okay, don't worry about this code. We are going to see. Let me compile it. Okay, compilation is successful. Now see guys, what is happening with this code. Let us try to trace it out. Okay, let me open the paint screen. Okay, we have the paint screen here, and okay, this is our code. Let me separate this main class. Okay, see, the code looks very simple. Code looks very simple. Right, and we have this code, and this code is ready for what? This code is ready for the compilation. We just did the compilation. So I have used the file name as test.java. Why test.java? The file name should always be saved with the respective class name, which is holding the main method. Okay, this is the class, where the main method has been placed. So typically the name of the file should be the same as the main class name, that is test.java. Okay, after doing all this, we did what? We did the compilation. Okay, so for the compilation, compiler has come into the picture. Okay, so this is the compiler, right? This is the compiler. Okay, let me write it down here, compiler. Okay, to achieve compilation, what is the command that I have used in the command prompt? Java c space file name.java. Yes or no? So this is the command that I use to achieve compilation. Right? This is the command. Okay, the moment you give this command, definitely this this test.java file will be compiled by the compiler. Okay, and the compiler is going to do what? Compiler is going to generate the dot class files. How many dot class files will be generated? That's the question. But you must understand one thing here. Before even the compilation is activated, okay, before even the compiler starts performing the compilation, compiler is going to do going to do some modifications. Okay, someone has just joined you guys. Let me know. Okay, compiler is going to do some modifications. Before the compiler is performing the compilation, the compiler is going to check each and every line of the code. Okay, it has found that the class A is not extending to any class. It has found what? It has found that the class A is not extending to any class. It thinks, okay, the class A does not have any parent. Let me give a parent to class A, which is what? Object class. This modification is done by the compiler. Secondly, it will look for the class B. Okay, class B is looking very perfect because class B is extended to class A. No issues. But if you look at the class test is not extending to any class. So compiler is going to do what? Okay, so the class test is not having any parent. So let me give the parent to the class test. So the parent is object class, super class, mother of all the classes, parent of all the classes. Right? So after doing this modification, the compiler will start the compilation. Right? Now the compiler will start the compilation. After the successful compilation, compiler will generate 3 dot class files. Compiler will generate what? 3 dot class files. Why 3 dot class files? There are 3 classes that is specified by the programmer. If you see here, we have specified only 3 dot class. One is class A, second one is class B, and third one is class test. That's why 3 dot class files. Okay, so there will be what? There will be A.java. Okay, there will be B.java, and there will be what? C.java. Okay, these 3 dot class files are typically generated by the compiler after the successful compilation. Where is the proof for this? Okay, now if you go to the folder, see, look at this folder, guys. Typically the folder structure is in the D drive. Inside the Java 3 folder, I performed a compilation. So inside this D drive, I should be able to see 3 dot class files, right? Okay. Are you able to see 3 dot class file? This is one class file. This is another class file. This is another class file. See, this is the dot class. This is how it looks like internally. We cannot read this actually. This is how the dot class file looks like. It's a binary. It's a byte code actually. It's an intermediate code. You cannot read this. Only computers can understand this. Okay. So my idea here is, are you able to see 3 dot class files? This is the file that we have saved, a test Java file, test.java. The remaining 3 files are dot class files, A dot class, B dot class, C dot. This has happened after the compilation, right? So now the compiler generates 3 dot class files. After compilation, okay, we need what? We need the JVM to execute the code. So just understand that this is the JVM. Right? So now the JVM is coming into the picture. Okay. Java virtual machine. Now focus here. Okay, we did just a compilation. For the execution, the command is Java space class name. So we are getting output as SBA, SBB. Okay. We will trace the output actually. We will trace the output. What is the typical command that I use for the execution? Java space test. Right? So let me write it down here. The typical command is Java space test. The moment you give this command, the JVM gets activated. Please remember, the moment you give this command, the JVM will get what? It gets activated. So it has get activated, right? After the activation, after the successful activation, the JVM will load one dot class file. Which is that one dot class file? We have 3 dot class files here. Why C has come here, guys? Test.java. Sorry about this. This test.java. Test.java. Okay. JVM is going to load only one dot class file. Which is the dot class file? In the command prompt, we are specifying to load the test file. So the test.class file has to be loaded inside the JVM. It's very specific. It's very clear that in the command prompt we have given which dot class file to be loaded. Test means test dot class file has to be loaded inside the JVM. As soon as the JVM is activated, this dot class file will be loaded. But keep one thing in mind. Okay, don't you think that this test dot class file because of the compiler, it is extending to object class? Object class is part of Java library. Okay, and there is a library inside Java. Just assume that this is the library inside the Java. Okay, when you download Java, you will download, all this Java library will be available to you. Okay, inside this Java library, it will store all the predefined dot class files. So object class is also one of the predefined dot class file. Object dot class. Object dot class. This object dot class, and again I did one more mistake. All these are what? Dot class files. Need some sleep. Dot class, and test dot class. Okay. Inside the Java library, dot class files, all the dot class files, all the predefined files will be stored inside the Java library. Now, if you see, we are giving a command to load test dot class files. Yes or no? We wanted to load test dot class files. Okay. At the time of loading this test dot class file, it will check. Okay, this test dot class file, the test class file is extending to object class. Okay. Firstly, it will load the object. It will load the parent class firstly. It will load the parent class. Okay. Object class is the parent class. Object class is what? Object class is the parent class. Then it will load the respective child class. So in our case, firstly, this object dot class file will be loaded inside the JVM. Right? At the time of loading this object dot class files, all the static contents, static blocks will be recognized and executed. But inside the object class, there is no static context. Right? Then it will load test.java file. At the time of loading this test.java file, test.class file, if there is any static context, that will be recognized and executed. But in the test class, there is no static context. So till now, in the console, we are not going to see anything. Okay, after loading all these two dot class files, now main thread will be created. What is it? The main thread will be created. Right? This is empty. Let me keep it as main thread. Okay, this main thread will get access to the main method. Okay, this is the main method, and all the instructions inside the main method will be executed. So far so good. Okay, what is the first instruction in the main method? P obj equal to new p, which means an object is created, an object is getting created, right? So in order to actually start the object creation, okay, before even creating the object, okay, this main thread will load the respective dot class files to the JVM. Okay, so this is object is created for B class, right? Object is created for which class? For B class. Okay, so JVM will try to load B dot class file to the JVM. Will try to load what? Will try to load B dot class file to the JVM. Okay, but this B dot class file is dependent upon, it is extending to another class which is A class. Okay, it will try to load the parent class. Okay, then it will try to load what? The A dot class file to the JVM. But again, this A dot class file is depending upon object class because it's a parent class. Yes or no? Right? It is dependent upon this. It will try to load the object dot class to the JVM. Okay, but remember one thing, dot class files will be loaded only once. It will look if the object dot class file is already there inside the JVM or not. Of course, already we have an object dot class file. Already we have what? We have an object dot class file. It will not load this object dot class file for the second time. If it is already there, done. Only one time dot class files will be loaded to the JVM. So this is the point that you have to remember. How many times the dot class files will be loaded to the JVM? Okay, the note. Okay, the answer is, please be informed that only one time the dot class files will be loaded to the JVM. Okay. Now we are here. Okay. Object dot class file is already there. Okay. Nextly, it has to load what? A dot class file, because we are creating an object for B class. That is, that is crystal clear. We are creating object for B class, but B is extending to A. Okay. Then we are trying to load the, the JVM is trying to load the dot class file of class A, but A is extending to object. It will try to load the object dot class file to the JVM. Unfortunately, there is already object dot class file, so it will not load for the second time. Okay, now it will load a dot class file. Okay, now a dot class file will be loaded to the JVM. Okay, let us keep this a dot class file here. Okay, now remember, at the time of loading this a dot class file, at the time of loading, okay, what did I just say? All the static blocks and variables will be recognized and executed. The moment it is getting loaded, it will see if there is any static context inside the class A. We have one static context. This will be executed. When this will be executed, at the time of loading the dot class file. At the time of loading what? The time of loading dot class file. Since JVM is loading a dot class file to the main thread is loading a dot class file to the JVM. At the time of loading, if there is any static context, that will be recognized and executed. So there is one static context. That's why the output is SBA. That's why the output is what? SBA. Okay. Secondly, after loading a dot class file, it has to load b dot class file, right? Now b dot class file is going to load inside the JVM. At the time of loading this dot class file, it has to recognize what? It has to recognize the static blocks and static variables. Is there any static block and variable? Yes, there is one static block inside class B, which is that this one. This will be recognized and executed. So what is the output in the console? SBB. Okay, that's why in the console you are seeing what? SBB, SBA as well as SBE. Why the order is always from top to bottom? Why top to bottom? Firstly, all the parent class dot class files will be loaded, then the child class dot class files or subclass dot class files will be loaded inside this hierarchy. Are you able to understand this, course, guys? Everyone, why do we have this output? Because of this reason. Yes, no? Are you able to follow? You won't get this kind of explanation anywhere. Everyone, Samyukta, Shashwant, you have any doubts? This is very important going forward. Yeah, now you answer me. If you have understood this, try to think and answer me to this question. Okay, I want to place a static block inside the test class, guys. I want to place the static blocks inside the test class. Okay, now if I run this code, what could be the possible output, guys? Can you tell me? I have shared the code. If I run this code, what could be the possible output? Ratna says test SBA. What about others? Good, Ratna. What about others? Do you agree with Ratna? Everyone? I did only one change. I have added a static block inside the test class. Okay. By doing it, so what could be the possible output, guys? Test. What about others? Only 3 guys are answering. Come on. Samyukta, Shashwat, this from you. Okay, the answer is So this is the answer. Test SPA and SPB. Okay, Ratna Kumar is correct. Okay, test SPA, SPB. Okay, and I don't think any explanation is required for this. Okay, so let me keep it very simple this time. Okay, this is our program. Okay, understand guys, please try to understand this. Okay, I'm repeating it for the second time, please try to focus here. Okay, so we save this code and we perform the compilation, right? So the compiler is going to do some manipulations. What kind of manipulations it is going to do? Extends object. If the class is not extending to any other class, that class will be extended to object class. So this class is also getting extended to object class. Extends object, right? And the typical command for the compilation is what? Java C space. Okay, this file needs to be saved as test.java. Okay, the typical command for the compilation, the command is what? Java C space test.java, right? This is compiler. Okay, you do what? Java C space test.java. The moment you give this command for the compilation, okay, this test.java will be loaded and it is going to start performing the compilation. Okay, at the time of doing all this, it is going to extend object, for the classes that is not extending to any other class, and it will generate three successful dot class files. How many dot class files? Why 3? Because we have only 3 classes. Depends upon number of classes that you are placing. You have placed only 3 classes, so there will be a dot class file, there will be also b dot class file, there will be also test.class file. Okay, the compiler work is successfully completed. Okay, now JVM need to perform the execution. Just imagine that this is the JVM. Okay, to activate JVM, what we are supposed to do? We need to give the execution command. Okay, what is that execution command? Java space the respective class name, main class name, test. Okay, test is the main class name. Okay, so the moment you give this test, okay, it will load which dot class file. It will load test.class file, because that is the specification here, right? So at the time of loading this test.class file, of course, by loading this test.class files, it will ensure that object.class file will be loaded first. This object.class file is not generated by the compiler. Please remember, this object.class file is already there inside the Java library. Is part of Java library. Is part of what? It's part of Java library. Just imagine that this is Java library. So this object.class file is already part of Java library. Okay, first object.class file will be loaded inside the JVM. Why? We are giving test.class file to be loaded, but this object.class file is parent of this test.class file. So parent will be loaded inside. Okay, since the parent object class has no static blocks, then the child will be loaded. Now child is what? Test.class file. Okay. At the time of loading this test.class file, at the time of loading, static context will be recognized and executed. What is the static context we have? Only test is the static context we have. That's why the output in the console is going to be what? Test will be displayed in the console. This part is done. This part is successfully done. Okay, then what happens? Main thread will be created. Why main thread will be created? To get access to the main method. Okay, this is the main thread. Okay, this is the main thread. Okay, it has to get access to what? It has to get access to the main method. Yes or no? Okay, what? So this is the main method. What is the first instructions inside the main method? Object is being created for what? Class B. Okay, so to even before creating an object, to do the object creation, we need to, JVM has to get the b.class file, right? So it will try to load b.class file, but this b.class file is being a parent to a class here. It means it will try to load a.class file, but again there is a but. This a.class file is dependent as a parent, which is object.class file. Okay. Firstly, it will try to load object.class file. Secondly, a.class file. Thirdly, b dot class file. This is the order: first, second, and third. This is the order. But what's the problem here? When it tries to load b dot class file, but b dot class file is already there. It's already there inside the JVM. So it will not load it once again. It will ignore. What is the second one? Second one is what? A dot class file has to be loaded. Yes, let us load that. Load a dot class file. Time of loading again, you need to remember what? It will recognize and execute the static block or static variable. We have only one static block inside the class A. Right? So the answer is SBA. That will be executed. So output is what? SBA. Right? Right? So second class is also loaded. Now the third one is it has to load b dot class file. Okay, b dot class file is there. Okay, it will be loaded. Okay. Now at the time of loading this b dot class file, static block of b, if there is any static blocks inside the b, that has to get recognized and executed, right? So there is one static block. So the output is SPB. Very simple, isn't it, with respect to SPB? Are you getting this, everyone? At least now are you getting this now, everyone? People who haven't answered. Ratnakumar, good Ratnakumar. Thank you for your answer. I will ask you one more question. Please try to answer this question also. Okay, now I am extending test to extends B. Okay, so I think the program is visible. We have class A, class B, we have class test we have, but this time test is extending to B and B is extending to A, and A is going to extend to what object? Having said this, now what is the output now? Don't you think we get the same output or we get different output now? Think guys. I'm not trying to confuse you. Okay, try to focus, try to understand the control flow. Try to understand the control flow. Try to understand the control flow. Till differently, sir. Good, Ratna. What about others? Do you agree with Ratna? Samyukta, Sashwant. You agree with Ratna? You agree with Chaitanya? Thanks, Sagar, for trying. Everyone, you don't have pen and paper pen and paper next to you. Krishna Prasad is there. Jyoti, yes. I know answers from you guys. Okay, let me run this. Java C space test.java, Java space SPA, SPB, SPC. Very simple, guys. Why you are finding it very difficult? You can't say that I know already, that's why I'm angry. But Ratnakumar is giving answers. No? Ratnakumar is giving answers. Chaitanya is giving answers. Why you are not able to give answers? Okay, look at this. Look at the tracing. Look at the tracing of the static context. People who are not getting this, I will give you a small trick. Give you what? I will give you a small trick. Okay, so this is okay. First, try to identify the main class. This is the main class, right? Now you see in the main class, every time we have to execute the class that has the main method. Okay? Definitely, the command is going to be what? Java space test. Yes or no? For execution, not for the compilation. Java space test. Okay, so but during the compilation, Java C space test.java is going to produce how many dot class files? 3 dot class files, right? A, B dot class, C dot class. Okay. This many dot class files will be generated by the compiler. Okay, just take it in a box, right? Now, during the execution, the typical command for the execution is what? Java space. What is it? Java space test. Okay. So, with the moment you give this command, definitely test.class file has to be loaded, right? So, why is coming here? I'm sorry. This is test. This test.class. A, B, and test.class. Test.class. 3.class. Okay. The moment you give Java space test.class file has to be loaded. But here test.class file is a child of class B. It means, okay, this test.class file. Okay, let me remove this first. Let me remove this. Okay, test.class file. Right? Test.class file is being a child of class B. Right? When you try to load this test.class file, it is not a standalone file. It is dependent upon the parent, which is what? B. Right? When you try to load the b.class file is not a standalone file because B is extending to A. Okay? You will try to load the c.class file, but C is not a standalone. Every class, if you're not using any extends keyword, that will be extended to object class. Okay? Object class will be somewhere in the library, Java library. Right? So this is the hierarchy. You got the hierarchy. You try to load test.class file. This is dependent upon class B. Okay? You try to load class B, but this class B is dependent upon class A. You try to load class A, but this class A is dependent upon object class. In this order it will load. First load this. All the static counter is executed. Then load a.class file. Okay. What is the static context in a.class? SBA. Then load b.class file. What is the static context in the b.class file? SBB. Then load test.class file. At last, what is the block in the static context? Test. That's why SBA, SBB test. That's why I'm saying when in the beginning itself I was telling you to remember this, recognize and execute at the time of loading the .class file to the memory. If you understand the order of the .class files loading, then answering this question is going to be very easy. Yes or no? Making sense? Everyone who has not answered? Yes, no. Okay, can I ask you one more question? You people will answer? Can we go? I want answers from everyone. Only I am getting confidence with two guys. I try to answer this. I am not using any extends keyword this time. I'm not using any extends keyword this time. Right? This is the last question I want you to answer. Okay, let me explain this for you. I have class A, I have class B, and I have class test. Okay, right? Every class has static block. Every class has static block. If I run this code, if I compile and execute this code, what is the output, guys? What do you think? Let's see who is going to answer this correctly. You can take time, but let's see who is going to answer this. Chaitanya says error. What about others? What about others? Okay, let me keep this for you. Let me post this in the chat box. Oh, okay. Sorry. Every time I'm getting this class C. Good. Okay, this should be a. Sorry. Okay, now answer this. Okay. Good Chaitanya. Good Chaitanya, good Ratna. This is correct, I guess. Huh? Can you answer this for me? Okay, Ratna Kumar has already answered. What about others? What about others? What about others? Let's see. Everyone, I am eagerly waiting. What about others? Okay, think once again. Think once again. Okay, my answer is what I am going to say is. Okay, my answer is going to be what? My answer is test, right? Then SBB, then SASBA. Is there anyone who will agree with my answer? Can you agree with this answer? Jyoti says Sarah. Anyone who will agree with this answer? We will see. We will try to run. We will try to run this code. Let's see who is correct. Even I am not sure. My guess is this. Okay. I am also like what is this? AOBJ equal to okay. It is not something AOBJ1. Okay. Variable mistake. Nothing else. Test SBB SBA. I am correct, guys. I'm going to agree with my answer. Are you able to guess why we are getting test first? Okay, this is a last chance for you. This last time I'm explaining it for you. Okay. Please. This topic is little bit confusing. I understand. Okay, but you should understand the control flow. In static. Okay. Let me separate this test class. Okay. So we know the commands for the compilation. We also know the commands for the execution. Right? Because of this compilation command, Java C space test.java. Okay. We are going to see how many dot class files we are going to see. One is A dot class. Okay. Second one is B dot class. Third one is test dot class. Do you agree with this? Test dot class. Okay, the compilation part is successful. Then for the execution, the typical command is Java space test, right? Java space test. The moment you give this command, firstly, don't you think the test.class file will be loaded? Do you think the test.class file will be loaded firstly? Right, before even loading the test.class file to the JVM, test.class file has to load what the object class file. Okay, every class will be extending to object. Don't think about the object class file now, because even though if you load it, if you don't load it, the output is not going to be recognizable in the console, because no static blocks in the object.class file. Okay, every class is going to extend object class. Extends object. Typically, the main class is going to be test class, because we have main method inside the test class. Okay, that dot class file will be loaded firstly. Okay, while loading this dot class file, since it has a dependency on object class object dot class file will be loaded from the library, Java library. There is an object class, object dot class inside the Java library. Okay, that will be loaded first. Don't you think so? Okay, at the time of loading this, all the static context will be recognized and executed. There is no static context. Then test.class file will be loaded. The time of loading this, static context will be recognized and executed. So we have only one static context, which is test. Test will be displayed in the console. Then main thread will be created. Main thread will get access to main method. And what is the first instruction? B obj equal to new b. Now b.class file has to be loaded. Of course, object class file B class is extending to object is already there, so only b.class file will be loaded. Okay, the static context inside the b.class, inside the b class, is only one static context is SBB. SBB will be executed. Then what we have? Then the next line is object creation for class A. Right? So A.class file will be loaded. Time of loading. Of course, before loading this, it will look for object.class file. It's already there, so it will not load it once again. So A.class file will be loaded. At the time of loading, this will be recognized as SBA. Making sense? Wow. Any confusion is there? Hello, are you getting this now? Yes, no. What about others? I'm asking everyone, not only Chaitanya. Come on, guys, answer. I want answers from everyone. Will you be able to answer one more question if I ask you? Yes, no. Okay, now answer this. What is the answer now? Last question. I'm not going to ask you and board, disturb you anymore on top of static context. This is the last question. If I run this code, if I compile and execute, what is the output? Let me write this for you. Trust me, you will not get this kind of explanation anywhere. Did you agree with Ratna? No, Sagar. Sagar, you will understand this, okay, after you complete first few session of videos. But thank you for the try, okay? At least you're trying. Good. Test. Everyone, what about only 4 people has responded so far? Agree with the test? Yeah, see, as answer is test, okay? I don't want to waste any more time, okay? So this is very understandable. If I compile this code, because only tested.class file is loaded, so only one static block test will be executed. Okay, so one more query. So now we have understood what. So this line is making more sense now, I guess. This particular line is making more sense. Okay, static blocks and variables. Okay, we have been discussing about blocks. Even the variables also, the hierarchy is from superclass to the subclass. The hierarchy is from what? From superclass to the subclass. So let me take a small example here to understand these variables. I have a static block here. Let me remove this. Let me remove all the static blocks. Now we will work only on the variables. Thus I have a static variable. Any variable that is starting with static is called a static variable. Now focus here, guys. Teacher M1. Okay, I will give you the brief explanation about this. Okay, now I am going to remove this as well. Okay, now static. So I have two classes. Inside the two class, I have taken a variable. Okay, what was the now see p obj equal to new p. First I will execute this, then we will trace the output. Okay, first we will execute this ehtn, then see. Let me execute this code. I will help you with the tracing. What is the error that we are getting? Okay, this should be static. This also should be static. Sorry. Side A. Okay, and inside B. Okay, let us return this as 1000. Okay, come on, guys, focus here. Let me run this. We are getting something like inside and inside B. Okay, why we are getting inside and inside B? I will explain it for you. But before even understanding this, always remember this, guys. Always remember what? Always remember this point. Static blocks and variables. Okay, this point is very important. Are recognized and executed at the time of loading the dot class file to the JV. You know, we are trying to understand if the variable is doing the same. If the variables are recognized at the time of loading, that I am giving the proof for variables now. I have given the proof for blocks. Now I am giving the proof for variables. Okay, let me open my paint screen. Please focus here. Let me separate the main class. Okay, now please ensure we have two static variables. Okay, this is one static variable, right? And inside the class B, this is one static variable. Like static blocks, these static variables are recognized and executed at the time of loading the bytecode to the JVM. Please keep that thing in the mind. Okay, now as usually we will do what? We will take this program as a whole. We will take this code as a whole. Okay, then we will start imaging, do the tracing with the compilation steps as well as the execution steps. Okay, usually typically this code has been saved with test dot, right? So we need to do what? We need to activate the compiler. Okay, to activate the compiler, what is the typical command, guys, to activate the compiler? What is the command that we have to do what? To activate this compiler. Okay, can I say Java C space Java C space test.java? Same thing. This test.java compilation command. So the moment you give this command, it is going to activate the compiler. Okay, compiler is activated. As soon as the compiler is activated, it is going to read the code from top to bottom. Okay, it will identify, oh, poor class A is not extending to, it has no parent. So let me give a parent to the class A, object class, right? Of course, it will read the class B. Class B is also perfect. Class B is looking perfect, right? And it will read the test class. Even test class does not have any parent, so it is going to do what? Going to extend object. These things will be done by the compiler. Then it will start performing the compilation. Okay? While performing the compilation, after the successful compilation, after the successful compilation, how many dot class files will be generated? 3 dot class files will be generated. How many? 3 dot class files. One is A dot class, second one is B dot class, third one is test dot class. Just try to recognize this order. If you follow this order, you will not get any confusion while giving the answers. The 3 dot class files will be generated. Okay. So the job of the compilation is completed successfully. This is done. This is successful. Now what is in the next job? We need to perform the execution. Yes or no? Execution is pending or not? Compilation is complete. Execution is pending. Okay. For the execution, the command is Java C space test. Agree with this? Java C space test. This is the typical command for the execution, right? So the moment you give this command, okay, the JVM will get activated. What will get activated? JVM is going to get activated the moment you give this command. Okay, JVM is activated. Okay, focus here. Okay, this is JVM. As soon as the JVM is activated, what is the next instruction? Test. You are giving an instruction to load the test.class file, right? Of course, the test.class file has already been generated by the compiler. It has to get loaded, but before loading this test.class file, it will check for any dependency, because test class is internally dependent upon object class. Test class is the child class and object class is the parent class. Okay, first it will fetch, it will pull the object.class file inside the JVM. Okay, where is this object.class file is available? Inside the Java library. There are so many .class files are there. Now the .class file is what? Object.class. Right? So the moment it is loading test.class file, it will check if the test class has any parent. Of course, there is a parent. The name of the parent is object. Okay, let us load the object.class file. Okay. At the time of loading, if it has any static block or if it has any static variables, that will be recognized and executed. So there are no static, officially there are no static blocks and variables inside the inside the object.class file. So nothing is going to happen. Okay. Then the tester.class file will be loaded inside the JVM. Okay. At the time of loading, it will check for these two things. Is there any static block inside tester.class file? No, there is no static block. Right? Is there any static variables inside the tester.class file? Inside the test class file? No, there is no static variable. No static block, no static variable. So nothing is going to be displayed in the console. Okay, so far so good. Right? Next thing is, okay, once the test.class file is loaded, the main thread will get created because it has to get access to the main method, right? This is the main thread. Okay. Main thread will get access to what? Will get access to main method. What is the first instruction inside the main method? Only one instruction is that be obj equal to new ob. Before even performing the object creation, first it will check, first it has to load the b.class file, yes or no? It has to load what? It has to load the b.class file. But b.class is a child to a.class file. So it has to load a.class file. But again a.class file is child to object.class file. It has to load object.class file. But object.class file is already there. So it will not load once again. Then what is remaining? It has to load a.class file first. Let's load a.class file first. Yes or no? Okay. So at the time of loading this a.class file to the JVM, it will do two checks. It will do two checks. What are the two checks? Is there any static block or not? Is there any static block inside the class A? No. Second check. Is there any static variables? Yes, there is a static variable. What is it? This is the static variable that we are talking about. Right? This will be recognized and executed. Okay. There is a variable A. There is a variable A, which is what? Which is depending upon the method M1. Focus here. Variable A is there, that is depending upon the method M1. Okay. This M1, if it is a direct value, the direct value will be saved here. But it is not a direct value. We are not assigning any direct value. We are assigning what? We are executing a static method that is going to return the value. Okay. This static method will be executed. On executing the static method, the value 100 will be assigned to the variable A. So it has to execute the static method. Right? While executing the static method, it has encountered this system.out.println inside A. Right? That will be displayed in the console first. Okay, just assume that this is the console. Okay, inside A will be displayed by the console. What is the second thing? Okay, after executing this, it is going to return the value 100. Okay, this 100 will be assigned to the variable A. 100 will be assigned to the variable A, and inside somewhere in the JVM there is an area called method area. There is an area called method area. Okay, let me expand this. There is an area called method area. Okay, this is called method area. Okay, inside this method area, it will store the variables like A equal to, this is the memory. This is the things that is happening inside the memory method area inside the JVM. Okay, this is the execution thing. Okay, now a.class file has been loaded successfully. What is pending? Okay, this a.class file is related to what? Related to class B. Now b.class file needs to be loaded because hierarchy is from top to bottom, always top to bottom. Right? Now where is the b.class file? It is outside. It has to be loaded. Right? At the time of loading, once again, at the time of loading, it will do these two checks. What are the two checks? Any static block, any static variables. Is there any static blocks inside the class B? No static block. Is there any static variable? Yes, there is a static variable. What is that? This one. Right? This will be recognized and executed. But here again, integer B is holding not a value, but it is triggering a method. It is triggering a method M2. This indirectly, this M2 will be triggered, this M2 will be invoked, the value that is returning by this M2 will be stored by this variable P. At the time of executing, it has encountered an instruction like what? System.out.println inside B. Right? So inside B will be displayed in the console. Okay, and this is going to return 1000. This 1000 will be assigned to the variable b, which will be stored in the method area inside the JVM. B equal to 1000. Okay. These are the changes that is happening inside the memory, but these are the values, these are the statements that you can see in the console. Inside A, inside. Don't you think that we got the same thing inside the console? Inside A, inside. Why we got this? Now, don't you think that I have justified this particular line? Don't you think that my line is justified now? Do you think that this is justified now? Static blocks and methods are recognized and executed. This is the proof. This program is the proof. This program is what? This program is the proof. Program is the proof. So this many things are happening behind the scenes. Okay, but you can you know you can just try to replicate this from your side. It's going to be easy, guys. Right? By this, the static context, and of course there is nothing to be discussed on static methods. Okay, when you call it will get executed. That's it, nothing else. Just you will call, you will give a call like just like this. Okay, it has nothing to do with anything. So you can call that method directly with the help of class name. Obj dot, when you do m2 call, m2 will get executed, things like that. This m2 will get executed. M2, I mean m2 inside m2 method is getting a direct call. You are using the object reference. You are calling m2. So m2 method is getting executed again. So inside B is getting displayed. Making sense, everyone?